Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I hope if the things we discuss today are of interest to you, you will subscribe to our weekly calls and hopefully contact us to get our initial no-obligation package regarding our Family Asset Protection Trust package. Today is March 6, 2024. We've got a lot to discuss here today. Before I begin, since Monday, I've gotten literally over 200 contacts between phone calls, texts, and emails. That means a lot of you have not heard back from me. And I'm sorry that I can't move any quicker than I am right now. But I promise you, after this call, I'm going to be spending the rest of the week and however long it takes to get back to you and resolve whatever issue you have. Some of you are interested in getting our initial package. We'll get that out to you. Some of you have specific questions about your existing trust. I'll be glad to assist you there. And some of you even want to make last-minute changes. I don't really recommend doing that unless it's absolutely necessary, but I will assist you in all of that. And again, I will be on the phone nonstop until I have returned each and every contact, and that goes with returning emails as well. So let's go ahead and get started for today. First, of course, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. Of course, what's of most interest to individuals is a date and a rate, which, of course, we can't give you in all good faith. Although things are moving quickly, there's an issue of whether or not this could happen before or after Ramadan. The reason I say that is because I really don't foresee this happening during Ramadan, simply because of the nature of the holiday. Ramadan is basically the celebration of the first revelation of Muhammad. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It's a very serious religious period of time with prayer and fasting. So while anything's possible, it seems to me, I'm not a Muslim, but it seems to me unlikely that it would occur during Ramadan. So in my opinion, I wouldn't be surprised if what we want to see happens prior to Ramadan, but if it doesn't, I think it would pop shortly thereafter, if not immediately thereafter. So let's go ahead and get into our call, talk about where we are. First, I have a little confession to make here. I've been doing these calls for nearly 15 years. This is the first call that I can remember where I have absolutely no idea where it's going. The information that I've got is coming from so many different directions, so many different places, and the implications for us are so important that I've just been unable to do what I've been pretty successful in the past at, and that is to basically put everything down in a very systematic way, present it that way. Sitting here at my desk, I have 15 different documents here that are sitting here in no particular order. So I'm on the fly here. I'm really going to wing it. I apologize for that, but there's just no other way I was able to put all of this together this week. So let's do the best we can and begin. First, I want to talk about all of the boxes that are being checked with regard to the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, because all of the things that we've been waiting for years, things that we thought were going to happen in years past and for whatever reason didn't happen, would be one step forward, 2 steps back. And it's been very frustrating, and we've really had to be patient. But things are moving quickly now, and there's no way they can undo what they've done. They've started, as I've said before, in my opinion, they've reached the point of no return. This thing is done. We can't give you a date and a rate, but in my opinion, it's done, and I think the things I'll discuss here today will confirm that opinion. Well, we know that the project to delete the zeros is nearly done. We know that the auctions, after all of these years and all of the pilfering, is finally over. We know that the WTO has basically stated that pursuant to the last file presented to them by the CBI of Iraq, that they have fulfilled all of the requirements for entry to the World Trade Organization, which is just one step away from saying they are a member. They are a de facto member in that they have fully complied, and the WTO has stated so. We know that there has been recently a drop in the price of food in the country, which I think is directly linked to some currency manipulations that are moving in the right direction. And we know that the float of the dinar and the release of the lower dinars will be coming very shortly, because finally we're seeing the gap close between the official and the market street or parallel rate of the dinar. So all of that's moving in the right direction. We also know that the IMF and the World Bank are all assisting the CBI and the banking system in the country. We know that millions, tens of millions of individuals have established new bank accounts in Iraq. We know that the country is releasing the Visa and MasterCard electronic debit cards. We also know that the banks have even established commissions for the electronic services, which makes absolutely no sense if they're not going to implement the electronic services. And we know also that the IMF is assisting with the detailed exchange protocol, which has to do with the 3-0 provisional currencies going into the banks as they collect the 3-0 provisional currencies to be exchanged for the new national currency. So once again, the question is, well, when is this going to happen? It could happen before Ramadan. Again, I think it's highly unlikely it would happen during Ramadan. But if it doesn't happen before Ramadan, I think it's going to happen immediately thereafter. I want to touch just briefly on the protocol itself and what this means. We know that the dinar now against the U.S. dollar is something like 0.000837, et cetera, which basically we round that off to, let's say, when they would drop the 3 zeros, 86 cents. If the dinar hits 86 cents against the dollar, I think they'll reinstitute it at 1-to-1. When they reinstitute it 1-to-1, it very quickly is going to move to an equilibrium rate. Well, what is that equilibrium rate? Well, there's three rates that I want to think or talk about. One is $3.22. That was the rate of the dinar when it went into the program rate. 20 years later, with the country in substantially better shape and inflation, it seems to me that 322 would be the floor, not the ceiling for the dinar. The next rate I want to mention is $3.46. That's the value of the Kuwaiti dinar against the U.S. dollar. That currency has the highest value on the planet against the U.S. dollar. Yet the wealth of Kuwait is dwarfed by that of Iraq. So it seems to me that 346 is a conservative number too. The number I want to mention is 348. That was a number a few months ago that was expressed as the Basel IV compliant rate of the dinar against the U.S. dollar. And, of course, anyone that's been listening to our calls, my extrapolated rate for the last 15 years has been $5. I've said based on the known natural resources of Iraq, based on the movement through the phases of Basel, it seemed to me that $5 against the U.S. dollar, $5 per Iraqi dinar seemed like a good number. And, of course, the number they came out with at Basel IV compliance is $4.85. So let's conservatively say that we're looking for something between 322 and 485. which means I think it's entirely reasonable, and in fact an expectation that we're looking at something north of $4, about $4.25 seems perfectly reasonable under these circumstances. Now, the other thing I want to mention, because there's a lot of scuttlebutt going around at the present time, is that I've said not only is the reinstatement and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar baked into the cake with regard to all of the international contracts that they're consummating, I think they're actually operating on a rate, an assumed rate, maybe in a conservative assumption, but a trading rate that we in the public are not privy to. Well, of course, what's come out recently is some of the banking information on the private side is showing the Iraqi dinar. I think it closed last night at $2.72. So that's not a rate that's available to us. That's not a rate we could exchange the currency for. But it's a private side rate that is utilized when they try or attempt to consummate these international contracts with Iraq, whatever it's for. So this is very, very good news for us, and it's just another indication that things are moving quickly and in the right direction. I want to touch a little bit on the CBI operations. I touched on them last week, but I want to touch on them again because it's not, in my opinion, the United States Treasury, it's not the EU, it's not the central banks of other countries, it's the Central Bank of Iraq that's going to pull the trigger. Now, it's true that, of course, they have to be Article 8 compliant with the IMF, and which, of course, essentially the IMF is saying they've accomplished. But internally, it's the CBI. And what is the CBI doing? Well, they're in the final phases of their education for their citizens based on a number of rather clear statements made by economists in the country. The CBI is in the process of educating the banks with the assistance of the IMF and the World Bank regarding the protocol for the implementing the new exchange rate. They also are involved, the CBI, in currency swaps with other nations. Now, they would not be involved with currency swaps with other nations utilizing the program rate of 1310. It would be an absurd thing for them to do. Therefore, the currency swaps, once again, we don't know exactly what the assumptive rate they're utilizing, but the currency swaps with other nations, whether they're Mideastern nations, part of the BUNA or, the BRICS, it's got to be based on a reinstated value. And again, if we look at the rates on some of the private screens, we're looking at something close to $3. So that's another indication that they are prepared to flip the switch. And again, the private trading on the Forex is the number which I believe they have been using for months for the consummation of all of the contracts. Now, we're talking about contracts to assist them with their electric grid, with their water system, with their road system, for the exploration of oil and all their mining projects, for the 19 cities that they're going to build, for their new airport, all of that. There's no way they can consummate contracts for which they cannot make payment. They don't have nearly enough USD even to fund their budget, let alone all of these contracts. Therefore, all of these other nations have clearly entered into these contracts based on a new rate for the dinar. It would be like contracting to build someone a home who cannot prove that they have the money to pay for it. They have to have established somewhere that they have the ability to fulfill the contract and pay you for building their home. And that's where we are. So we have the budget, we have all of the international contracts, we have the imminent release of the lower denoms, and of course we have the HCL. They're all on board. They're waiting for one thing and one thing only, and that is the new exchange rate. That's where we are. There's nothing else that they need do in order to release the new exchange rate. Now, There's a lot of things I can get into today. As I said, there's a lot going on. Unfortunately, there's a lot going on in this country, and the reason that's important for us is not just because of the Family Asset Protection Trust package that we've offered, but because there are things going on in this country that we're going to need to be dealing with. We have a very important election coming up in November. And I really think, and every 4 years you hear people say, gee, this is the most important election in our country or in a long time or in history. But I really think an argument can be made that this is the most important election in the history of the United States. And for a very simple reason. I'm going to break it down very, very simply. There is a reason that Donald Trump has been a piñata of the left and of the media and of the Democrats since the day he came down that escalator. And it's because he made it very clear, and when he was in office, he made it very clear that his mentor was Andrew Jackson. Now, why is that important? As a matter of fact, when Donald Trump entered the Oval Office for the first time, he had both a picture and a bust of Andrew Jackson. Well, they say history repeats itself. And I really think with the election of Trump, that's what happened. So let's talk a little bit about Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, of course, made his bones during the War of 1812. He became a hero. He was against the central bank. He referred to them as a den of vipers. And he said when he got into office, he would end the central bank. He got into office, and he proceeded in that direction. And, of course, the entrenched individuals that were profiting from the central bank system wanted him gone. So the Speaker of the House at the time, Henry Clay, entered into a special agreement with John Quincy Adams, was referred to as the Great Corrupt Bargain. During the re-election for Andrew Jackson, there were 4 individuals that were in the race. Andrew Jackson won the plurality of both the popular vote and the Electoral College vote. But because he didn't win the requisite number of Electoral College votes, the thing fell to the House of Representatives to determine who the winner was. And again, Speaker of the House Henry Clay entered an agreement with John Quincy Adams to deny Andrew Jackson the presidency, even though he technically won. So what Andrew Jackson did was he went to the people and he explained what happened. He was called a liar. It was the big lie. But nevertheless, he convinced the people that what had been done to him was unconstitutional and a corrupt bargain. He won re-election, and he ended the central bank. Fast forward to today. Donald Trump goes into office. Andrew Jackson's his mentor. Despite the fact that Donald Trump never expressly pointed to the central bank, he has repeatedly said, we're going to have an economy that you've never seen before. If you think we did a good job working within the central bank system, just wait till you see what I do in my second term. Well, what happened? He lost re-election. And, of course, one thing that cannot be denied is that election laws were changed in the swing states, not by the legislature, which was required constitutionally, but by the governor, the lieutenant governor, or the attorney general of the state. And as a result, he lost narrowly several of the swing states. Of course, he complained about that. It was a legitimate complaint. And, of course, the immediate response was, oh, that's the big lie, you lost. So Donald Trump decided he was going to convince the people that he was the person that we needed. Of course, he doesn't have to do too much convincing because the present resident of the White House has just done an abysmal job. It doesn't matter whether it's the border, whether it's inflation, whether it's his extra constitutional executive orders, whether it's wars cropping up around the world. His approval rating is in the high 20s, low 30s, and I don't even think it's that good, to be honest with you. Nor do they have any other options. His vice president isn't electable. And incidentally, Kamala Harris is interesting because constitutionally, the vice president of the United States virtually has no executive authority to do anything. The vice president of the United States can basically operates at the pleasure of the president. So the president can say to the vice president, for example, sit in a corner, don't say or do anything, but you can campaign for my reelection in 4 years. Or the president can say as vice president, I'm going to tag you to do certain things. And, of course, he did tag her to do certain things, which she's abruptly failed at. But the vice president of the United States has very important legislative authorities because the vice president of the United States is the president of the Senate. And the vice president of the United States can walk into the Senate whenever they want, and when the vice president is there, they run the Senate. And most importantly, whenever there's a tie in the Senate, it's the vice president that can break the tie, and that's exactly what she's done. So despite the fact that she's been an abject failure at everything she's been tasked to do as vice president, from the perspective of the Democrats or the Biden administration, she's been very successful at her legislative jobs, and she's dutifully done what she's needed to do when necessary. So now we have an election coming up in November, and now Donald Trump is ahead in all of the polls, including the polls of the liberal pollsters, the liberal newspapers and organizations, and in all of the swing states. So what are they doing? Everything they can to get him off the ballot, whether it was constitutional or not. So let's touch on what's going on. The first thing I want to mention is Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution basically says that we, the people, can coin our own currency. That means we don't have to borrow it from a central bank. It means we don't have to pay federal income taxes to pay the interest on that loan. But most importantly, it means that the corrupt individuals in the Congress can't simply spend money we don't have, run up trillions in deficits, take that money to do a lot of nefarious things, like sprinkle it on people to get their votes, send the money to foreign countries that launder the money and send it back to them through their charitable organizations and their nonprofits. So Donald Trump wants to end the Federal Reserve and the Third Central Bank. And, of course, the powers in Washington don't want that to happen. The second thing I want to mention, something called a Bill of Attainder. What is a Bill of Attainder? It's mentioned in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. Very simply, a Bill of Attainder says that a person or a group cannot be found guilty of treason or any felony without a trial. So what have 12 states tried to do? They've tried to remove Donald Trump from the ballot as an insurrectionist. And, of course, insurrection is treason. But, of course, the problem is he hasn't even been charged, let alone convicted of insurrection. Why have they not done so? Because if they actually charge him, he's entitled to defend himself. If he's entitled to defend himself, he's entitled to discovery. If he's entitled to discovery, that means they have to give him all of the video from January 6th, all of the phone calls, all of the texts, all of the things that have mysteriously disappeared. The other issue they have to defend is their violation of habeas corpus. That is, these corrupt politicians held hundreds of people in jail without allowing them bond or to face their accuser on the charge of insurrection. Actually, they didn't charge them with insurrection. They said that's why they were arrested, but they couldn't charge them with insurrection because they knew there was no insurrection. So they charged them with loitering, with going into people's offices. One individual that went into Nancy Pelosi's office. Remember, the police opened the doors, not only of the building, but of the offices. So one person foolishly went into Nancy Pelosi's office and put his feet up on the desk. He got 4 years in jail for that. But people that burned down cities in 2020 got released without bail. It's pretty obvious what's going on here. So this is where we find ourselves. The last thing I want to mention, and this is why Donald Trump's ahead in the polls, this reason right here. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, known as the Guarantee Clause. It states that the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and or domestic violence. So what do we have? We have open borders. We have nearly 8 million people that have crossed our borders illegally. We have a spike in crime, which is a grotesque violation of the Guaranteed Clause, Article 4, Section 4. Fortunately for the American people, there's a silver thread in this black cloud, and it's this. They can't hide what they've done and what the result has been. This is why Donald Trump's ahead in the polls, and this is why he's being charged with anything they can concoct. They're trying to get him off the ballot. They're trying to schedule trials that they could have had 3 years ago. They're trying to schedule trials during campaigning. All of this is going on. And why are they doing this? Because they want to save our democracy. Well, unfortunately for them, we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional representative republic. And within that Constitution, the first 10 amendments are sacred. They're referred to as the Bill of Rights. Now the progressives, and now they call themselves progressives. They were progressives in the early 19th century. That's when the progressive movement initially began. Woodrow Wilson, of course, a premier progressive. And, of course, when you hear the word progressive, most people think, oh, they mean that, we're going to evolve, we're going to get better, we're going to progress. But that's not the meaning of the word from their perspective. They were called progressives because their desire was to progress beyond the colloquial constraints of the Constitution. Or as Barack Obama put it, the Bill of Rights is a series of negative rights because it tells the government what their limitations are. Well, you're damn right. That's precisely the point. The government works for the people, and the people determine what the government can and cannot do to them and for them. So this is how they save our democracy. They believe that indicting the presidential candidate most threat to their sitting president must be imprisoned. They believe we must stack the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court recently made a decision, 9-0, smacking down the attempt to take Trump off the ballot, and they can't even concede they were wrong on that. They want to end the Electoral College. The Electoral College allowed the states and the people to elect a president because he was going to be the president of all the states and all of the people. Now, it's interesting that they opposed the Electoral College They say we should go strictly by the popular vote. Well, every law that's passed is passed in the same fashion as the existence of the Electoral College. It has to pass both the Senate, which are representatives of the state, and the House, which are representatives of the populations of those states. So they even oppose the Electoral College. They also want to end the Senate filibuster. Once again, what's the Senate filibuster? It's minority rights. And that's how a republic works. In a democracy, especially the one they want to create, a one-party social democracy, the definition is 51% of the people can take away all of the rights of the other 49%. That's what they want. They also want to amend or repeal the First Amendment, and we know this by all of the inability of individuals to speak their minds by the fact that they're being censored. They want to end the Second Amendment with all of their BS laws. The Second Amendment is clear. You have the right to keep and bear arms, meaning you can possess arms and you can carry them. It's the only amendment which says this right shall not be infringed, yet the Second Amendment's been challenged more than any of the other amendments within the Bill of Rights. They want to basically eliminate the Fourth Amendment right to privacy, and their tool for doing that is a central bank digital currency where they monitor all of our expenses. It's none of their damn business. They want to, how do I say this? They want to limit our Fifth Amendment right to due process. If you doubt me, all you have to do is look at what they did in January 6th and what they're doing to a sitting president, Donald Trump, and a presidential candidate, Donald Trump. They're doing everything they can. Look at the case in New York. They're trying to force him to come up with $500 million before he even has a chance to appeal the case. It's absurd, absolutely absurd. And the judge, if any of you were watching on TV, he's an absolute clown. He looks like one of the Marx Brothers. And what he's doing is going to get shot down. It's not going to succeed. And it's funny because the left has railed against the 10th Amendment for years, but they want to use the 10th Amendment when they think they can keep a candidate off the ballot that they don't like. So this is what we're dealing with right now. Now, I know I've gone off track a little bit. The importance of this call and the reason you're listening, I know, is to discuss the situation with the reinstatement and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar and hopefully some of these other currencies and the trust program we've put in place. But the reason I've discussed these things really is for two reasons. Number one, because I'm so disgusted with what's going on in this country, and I'm frustrated. This is my chance to get it off my chest. It's a little cathartic for me. But second, because this is relevant to our trust package, because while we've marketed this trust package to denarians for over a decade, it's abundantly clear that as an American citizen that simply wants to be left alone from these bureaucratic bullies, is utilize whatever's available to you. So when I talk briefly, and it's going to be briefly about our trust package, I want you to think about it not in the context of an individual that has dinar and other currencies, but as the context of an American citizen who expects the government to honor the Bill of Rights and our rights as citizens and our right simply to be left alone and to live our lives in peace. So let's talk a little bit about our Family Asset Protection Trust Package. And these are the benefits it provides. First, privacy and anonymity. Assets held within the trust are sealed. And unless you have violated some law, committed some fraud, this trust cannot be pierced. And it's no one's business what's in that trust, which is there, of course, for your benefit. Second, this trust will allow you to avoid IRS scrutiny. As a currency holder, makes it very difficult for the IRS to audit you. Now, of course, as the beneficiary, the settlor of the trust, the homes, the cars, the investment accounts, bank accounts are there for your benefit. So you drive the cars that you own, you live in the home that the trust owns, you receive the interest and dividends from the investments within the trust. Those are very simple things to provide to the IRS. But the actual heavy lifting is being done within the trust, and the IRS is a little hesitant to go after sophisticated trusts. They prefer to go after the low-hanging fruit. The other issue is this. Once these currencies do revalue, the IRS is going to want to audit you because all of a sudden you've had this huge amount of wealth come into you that's substantially more than you've had in previous years, so the IRS may want to do an audit. Again, they're certainly hesitant to audit trusts, but the one thing they're not going to be able to do is a 6-year audit because that's the one that's the killer. And the reason they can't do a 6-year audit is because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. There's nothing else to audit, so that's easily explained. The third issue is if you plan on doing gifting to family and friends. We know that if you hold currencies, you want to gift them to family and friends prior to the revaluation in order to avoid the federal gift tax. But this trust not only allows you to gift currencies to family and friends pre-RV, but in those situations where you're hesitant to gift currencies because you don't think the individuals can handle the post-RV lump sum, within our trust package is a special gift subtrust which will allow you to have control of the post-RV proceeds. So you gift the currencies pre-RV, you avoid the federal gift tax, the currencies are then exchanged, the USD will then go into the special gift subtrust, you will manage that gift subtrust for the benefit of those beneficiaries, and therefore you've got control both pre- and post-RV. Fourth, this trust will not only allow you to avoid probate, because a trust will allow you to avoid probate. Why? What is probate? Probate is when a person passes away and the title is lost. There's no title to the asset. It must be transferred to the individual through the probate process. When you have a trust, the trust owns the asset and directions are within the trust as to how assets are to be enjoyed by the beneficiaries. So when a settlor or an individual passes away, there's no loss in title. There's no change in title necessary. It was owned by the trust pre-mortem and it's owned by the trust post-mortem. Here's the other kicker. When you transfer assets to heirs, depending upon the size of your estate, you may be subject to the federal estate tax, the tax that is assessed in order for you to transfer that estate to heirs. The federal estate tax for an estate in excess of $12 million can be as high as 65%. However, if your assets are in our trust, not only will there be no probate, not only will there be no public disclosure of the estate, not only will there be no disclosure of who your heirs are and how much they stand to inherit, they'll all get 100 cents on the dollar because the federal estate tax will be zero, saving you potentially as much as 65% of your entire estate. Now, post-RV, this trust provides asset benefits both pre- and post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust allows you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. Very simply, what does that mean? An individual can only be sued for what they actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time it's transferred out of title to an entity like our trust. I'll give you a simple example. You purchase 10 million dinar for $10,000. Transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue, and let's be conservative, for $1 to $10 million. You now have $10 million in trust. Can you be sued for $10 million? No. You can only be sued theoretically for $10,000 because that's all the currencies were worth when you transferred them out of title. Well, the purpose of civil litigation is a monetary award, and they're not going to get any of the $10 million, so there won't be a lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This will protect you from future bad acts after you've acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a strategy called segregation of assets. This is why we've created a family of trusts, and this is basically how it would work. Let's use the same example. You purchase $10 million dinar for $10,000, assign the currencies to the trust. They subsequently revalue for $10 million. Now that you have $10 million in trust, you make some purchases. A new home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, new cars, a boat, say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate sub-trust to be managed by the master trust, the trust that you initially established pre-RV to hold the pre-RV currencies. Now, how does this protect you from future bad acts and litigation? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you, but remember, you don't own anything. So the victim is left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your sub-trusts of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that sub-trust? Merely that one car along with the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the plaintiffs would be left to sue the insurance company. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole, and all of your other assets, net worth, and wealth are in the other sub-trusts, which under the law are separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident in question. Therefore, the plaintiffs have no standing to pursue them. So the trust package works very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. Cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your trust package prior to the revaluation of these currencies. This is why we send out our initial no-obligation package to individuals. Now, this trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold assigned currencies pre-RV and financial accounts like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, one gift sub-trust if you plan on gifting currency to family and friends and wish to manage the post-RV proceeds, which sub-trust can be converted to a standard sub-trust at any time, and 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. This was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've used in the past for our more affluent clients, package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to market the trust to denarians, we knew that that price tag would be unaffordable for many. So by simplifying the package initially, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. There's several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500. That's not possible. We even have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which would basically offset our out-of-pocket cost just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. Balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. The only proviso is once the Iraqi dinar revalues globally, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be actually less than $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we would work with you in whatever method works best for you. This is pretty much the information I wanted to provide today. I know I diverged a little bit from our ordinary calls, but things are happening in this country. My education has been in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning, but back in my college days, I got degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. So all of these areas converge for me, and that's why it's so difficult for me to really put this thing together the way I would like to have, although I think I got through it better than I expected, because there's a lot of disciplines involved in what we're doing here. We're dealing with politics. We're dealing with estate planning. we're dealing with trusts, we're dealing with finances, we're dealing with international currencies, and they all kind of converge in this right here today. But we are really living in historic times, and it's funny that people that live in the most historic times don't see it at the time. It's only with the passage of time can people look back and realize we're at pivotal times in history. But I really think we are in a very pivotal time right now. I think the things going on right now, people will be studying very closely 100 years from now, because I think that a directional change is coming, one for the better and one for the worst. But whatever direction it goes, I think we have put together, particularly for those of you that have currencies, a trust package that's going to serve you very, very well. I want to make one other observation. It's this. I think with the present configuration of the Congress, there will be no passage of the central bank digital currency, but we have no guarantee that that will continue. If we develop a central bank digital currency, one of the things that you can do very adroitly with this trust is establish accounts in those handful of states. They will have a digital currency, but it won't be a central bank digital currency, meaning that there won't be any credit score and there won't be any surveillance of the account and your expenditures. In addition, if necessary, through our offshore work, we can establish offshore accounts. Now, we strongly recommend that anyone today that has an offshore account or is establishing one, make sure you declare all of your income and pay your taxes on it. But the difference is the federal government, if they go to a central bank digital currency, will not have the control mechanism they want. I frankly don't see how a central bank digital currency can pass muster with the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, but we can utilize the Fourth Amendment to our advantage, irrespective of what they do. That's another reason why establishing our Family Asset Protection Trust is a pretty good idea. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A here, and I got a couple other things I'll discuss with you when I do open it up. And while I'm waiting for any questions, again, I want to mention a couple of things. First, there are a number of you that have contacted us, and I have not gotten back to you yet. As I said, we've had over 200 contacts since the beginning of the week, and when you get on the phone with people, they want to, they have an initial reason that they contacted us, but once we get on the phone, they have additional questions. I'm doing my best to try to answer your questions, but if I'm on the phone even for 10 minutes, that means I can only speak to 6 people in an hour. So we're doing the best I can to get our calls back to you. Again, I did want to give you our contact information. I strongly suggest you get our initial no-obligation package. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed. Let me say that again. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed, but you're under no obligation to do so. We send everything you need, including a PayPal invoice, in order to save time. But that invoice will auto-cancel, as the email you get states, within 5 days if you do not exercise it. So please don't contact us and say, hey, you sent me an invoice. The invoice will auto-cancel after 5 days. In order to save time, everything you need is in the package. The package has a lot of information about us, the trusts, the currencies. You can review the package. Contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. If you're ready to proceed, again, everything you need has been included. You can contact us by either email or phone if you want our initial package. You can certainly go to our website to learn more about us. That's Trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC.com. But if you want our initial package, again, by email or phone, our email address is Trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC @gmail.com, and our phone service is 307-274-4122. Contact us either way. We'll be glad to assist you. So let's go to our Q&A here. Our first caller is area code 301. That's 301. Go ahead.
Good morning. Good afternoon. This is Wanda from Baltimore.
Yes,
I
Wanda.
have a couple of
Sure.
questions. I am new to this, and this is all like a whirlwind to me, listening to different things. So I hear you saying that you need an EIN before the trust is, before the change.
No, that's not correct. No. Let me stop you for a second, Wanda. When you execute the trust document, the trust is in force and your currencies will have been assigned to it. One of the things you receive from us is instructions to get your EIN number. The only reason you need to get your EIN number now is because in the event there is another trust or entity out there with a similar, very similar name, the IRS won't issue the EIN number. But you only need your EIN when you go to the bank to do your exchange, because they need the EIN number in order to create the trust bank account in order for the USD to be deposited in it. But again, the only reason we suggest you apply immediately for your EIN is to make sure there's no overlap with another EIN number with a similar name.
So when I apply for the EIN number, I apply it under the trust?
Here's what you can do. I've got your phone number. And if you have my email, just email me and say, please send me the protocol for the EIN number. We have a detailed description, how you apply, what you say, what you don't say, what you fill out in the ad, everything you need. You're going to go to the irs.gov. So just I have your phone number. If you'd prefer, I can call you. You can give me your email address, and I will send you the protocol.
Okay, I would prefer you to give me a call because I'm kind of confused about this.
Okay, I'll be happy to call you after this call.
Okay.
And I wrote your phone number down.
Okay, and the other question was, how are we going to find the banks to accept the dinar?
You're not going to have a problem with that. There's probably going to be 5 major banks, and among them, the one I would probably suggest is Chase. The one I would suggest you avoid is Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo's had a number of ethical issues over the years, so I would avoid that bank. But it will be made available. What banks will be there? But it's the major banks. Bank of America, Chase. Who else? Let's see. Well, of course, Wells Fargo. There's another bank I was thinking of. But there's 4 or 5 major banks that you'll definitely be able to go to. And that won't be a problem at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly. Bye-bye now. Our next caller is area code 720. That's 720. Go ahead. Hello, 720? Okay, I'm going to have to move on. Our next caller is area code 978. That's 978. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. Can you tell us if there's any fees that need to be paid to the state where the trust is formed?
No, there are no fees. You don't have a statutory trust, meaning regulated state by state. There are no fees to pay for this trust. This trust is not filed in any city, in any county, in any municipality, or in any state. It's a completely private entity and applies for nothing.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Certainly. Bye-bye now. Next caller is area code 347. That's 347. Go ahead.
Yes, Praveen from New York. I think we've heard that. I think that Biden, he flew in I think 300,000 so migrants. Do you think he's doing that because of election purposes or what?
He's doing everything for election purposes. He can't run on his record, so he's got to do other things. A good example would be his attempt to forgive college loans. I mean, it's unconstitutional to have a de facto elimination of a legitimate contract. He can't do it. He tried it twice, and now he's trying it for a third time. So no, he can't do it. The Supreme Court has slammed him about a half a dozen times, but in my opinion, he's not calling the shots.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly. All right, bye-bye now. Our next caller is area code 954. That's 954. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim, how you doing? Hector Mayor in Florida. How are you?
Yes, sir. Okay. How can I help?
Okay. Question. We've gone over this before, but I have a group that we're all in doubt and confused as to when it comes time to do the exchange. If it came back, let's say it came back low, it came back $1, that part of exchanging maybe half of the money to cover the taxes, and then you'll have a little bit left over until, it revalues a little bit higher, and then exchange the rest. Is that the way to go, or that's not the way to go?
And
why?
There are there's three approaches to the exchange. Approach number one. I made a lot of money here. I'm not a sophisticated person. I'm going to go in and I'm going to exchange all my dinar and I'm gone. Approach number two. I've got plenty of time, so I'm not going to exchange it all at once. I'm going to allow the currency to appreciate, similar to what happened to the Kuwaiti dinar. The Kuwaiti dinar came back at about $3.46, but it went up over $9 before it dropped back down. So some people are going to allow the momentum to have the currency to grow. So maybe they'll exchange maybe a quarter of it, then they'll watch the rate and do it that way. The third way is kind of out of our control. Let's say, for example, the exchange happened on March 25th, all right? That means the taxes would be due on April 15th. That is the scenario where you might be forced to exchange the currency before you want to at a lower rate than you expect because taxes would be due on April 15th. That's what we want to try to avoid if we can. But you're right. If we're in a situation where it's a time crunch on the taxes, then obviously you're going to do the math and say, okay, what do I need to exchange to pay the tax? I'm not going to exchange any more than I have to because I think the currency is going to continue to appreciate. So those are the three scenarios.
Okay, clear enough. I thought there was just one. Okay, good. Now, and the other question is, one of our friends in our group was doing his taxes, and the accountant happened to be a Denarian too, which is a good thing. Holding quite a bit,
right.
Large amount, so it's a good thing. But she told him, obviously, that topic came up, and then, they started talking about it. She mentioned that the way this is going to work is not you walk into a bank to do your exchange, that it has to be done to the Department of Treasury by registered agent or registered broker, something like that, some sort of entity that is registered to do this. And then they'll set the rate, and it's all one-time shot. There's no waiting for it to go up. If the Department of Treasury says the rate is 3.25, you can exchange it all at once at 3.25 and you're done. It's not like you're going to do it gradually. And then, obviously, they take care of getting that money, whether they're going to get it in oil. They get the money back in oil. That's what the deal is, pretty much. It's just very different than we've been discussing. What do you think?
What you were mentioning about the oil is correct. In other words, once our central bank has the currency, they'll utilize their own technique. That currency will be retired by the Central Bank of Iraq, but it'll be utilized for the purchase of oil, for contracts for infrastructure and all of that. Now, there's a saying, a man with experience has nothing to fear from a man with an argument. I've had experience at this. With the Kuwaiti dinar, that's not how it happened at all. I'm not saying that's not possible, but what most likely will happen is you will go to the bank, and if and the bank will go upstairs to these other centralized central bank agencies having to do with the exchange. But with the Kuwaiti dinar, you could go in and exchange it at 346, 345, 375, 450, 550, 650, 750, whatever the rate was. So I don't see how they're going to be able to put that kind of a constraint. But let's say that they do. I don't think that will happen that way. But they have to give you a fair market rate. They can't. As a matter of fact, right now on the private rate, it was a 272. So if I go to a bank and they're telling me we'll give you a 345, I'm going to say, oh hell no, it's 272 there. If you think you're going to make 25% on my currency, that ain't going to happen. So I just don't see that happening. I really don't. I could be wrong, but in my opinion, that's not going to happen.
Okay, fair enough. And I agree with you. In fact, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'd be interested to know, did that accountant say anything about what he or she thought the tax exposure would be?
Yeah. She did mention it would be a flat 20% right out.
20%. Yeah. Well, that's like a cap gain tax.
It sounds to me like a short-term capital gain, right?
Right. Well, what happened with the Kuwaiti dinar is I think some banks had they put a 20% hold because taxes would be due. So I'd have to actually talk to that person myself to understand exactly what they meant by that. But again, now I've said on the call, I think they're going to call it ordinary income tax, even though publication 525 clearly refers to it as capital gains. So we'll have to see what's going on. Someone just texted me and said that the back screen, the private screen, shows the dinar right now at 293. So it was 272 12 hours ago. It's 293 now. And that, of course, that's no guarantee of anything. But
that you said that's private. That's between what parties? That 293.
The 293 is on the. I really don't want to get into the private screen, but there are, as I've said on my call, all of these international contracts are based on an assumptive rate. The private screen is showing the assumptive rate that is used as the underlying rate for the contracts. That's not a rate you and I can go to the bank and get. All right?
Okay. Understood. Yeah, but it gives us an idea of what they're looking at.
My point is, somehow this got out and people are now aware there's a private screen, but I've been saying for months that they're already it's a done deal. It's going to happen, and they're already operating on an assumptive rate because there's no way they can consummate the contract without some basis. Okay. So
exactly. Just have an idea.
What I've been saying for 6 months.
And for us, it's just a guide. Have an idea. Okay. And last but not least, and very quickly, you mentioned that the Bank of Iraq simply needs to pull the trigger. That's where we are. I thought that the U.S. has something to do with them because of the sanction. So what if the sanction's still there? Then it's not up to the Bank of Iraq alone.
They're in the process of de-dollarizing. The United States is going to have they can just leave the SWIFT system if they want. That's why I say at the end of the day, they want the United States help and support, but they don't need it at this point. They're working with the IMF. They're working with the UN. They're working with the World Bank, the Bank of International Settlements. The U.S. Treasury and the U.S. influence on Iraq is literally, you can't use a dollar in the country. So what control does the United States have?
Okay. Well, I was under the impression the sanctions, if they stayed up, that would be a problem, but then it's not?
Well, the OFAC sanctions, I don't think that's an issue at all. I also don't think that the official rate and parallel rate have to be identical either for it to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the momentum is carrying this thing along. If you think every star is going to be aligned, I don't think so. They don't have to be. The major ones are already in line, in my opinion. Okay?
Okay,
right,
so bye-bye. Then, let's just wait. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code which one then did I open? Oh, 281. That's area code 281. Go ahead.
Hey, hi, Jim. Robert from Texas. You hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a couple quick questions. Number one, if a person has a joint trust and one of the partners becomes mentally disabled, say, through a stroke or something like that, and is unable to really communicate, you recommend getting another trust without that individual on it, or what can you do?
If you have the medical documentation that the person is incapacitated and therefore cannot enter into a contract, then the other settler, the one of sound mind by default, is the sole settler. They'll have to make decisions because you have to have that declaration of incompetence, but having that, then like I said, the other settler by default operates as a sole settler. You shouldn't need to create a separate trust. Now, if you want to create a separate trust and transfer assets, but theoretically, you'd need the permission of the other person anyway. So it would fall back on the person's not competent. They can't put things in or disgorge the trust. So, in my opinion, as long as you have the documentation that person is rendered incompetent, then by default the other settler operates as a sole settler.
Well, it's not really incompetent, but are you familiar with the term aphasia?
I don't understand.
Well, aphasia is a term where a person can they don't communicate that well. They understand, but they just can't really communicate what they're thinking.
Once again, then you'd have to have a competency hearing. And, of course, that could create problems. If the person, even if they have difficulty communicating, if they're competent, if they understand and they're communicating, yes, I'll give them a choice between A, B, and C, and they say, yeah, I want to do B. If they're competent, then they can still function as a settler. Again, they would have to be declared incompetent, and you're going to have to call an attorney in your state and ask them and incompetency hearings are very they're painful hearings to have to go through. They really are, and that's something I would want to avoid at all costs.
Okay. Well, they understand. They're just a little slow. That's all. Anyway, so I think I get it. The next question concerning the actual exchange. Do you think you're going to actually have the Delta Room machines at each exchange location to count, or what do you think?
You mean in this country? In this country, you mean?
Yeah, in the U.S., right?
Well, all I'm saying is that bank's going to do two things, or I'm out the door. Number one, they're going to make the exchange right there. My currencies are not going anywhere, and number two, they're not going to put a 10 or 21 day hold on my money. Those are the two, deal breakers. I want to know the answer right there. I'm going to ask them. We're going to negotiate the exchange today, and the currencies are not leaving the premises until that's completed. The USD's in my account. Number two, there's going to be no hold on my money. They say yes to either one of those. I say, well, I'm going to the bank across the street. I'm just not going to. That's just me, though. I've been in the business a long time. I've butt heads with banks. I've had real problems with Wells Fargo. So the only way I'll ever walk into a Wells Fargo is literally that's the only bank I can go in. But that's just me.
Yeah, I get it. I've been with you for a long time. I feel the same way. Last question, and finishing up here. How long we're going to need some sub-trust right away? How long do you think it'll be before we'll be able to get
it's
sub-trust in place?
Funny you say that because I'm supposed to speak with the attorneys this week, and I'm going to tell them in no uncertain terms, you better hire some more paralegals right away because people are going to want to fund sub-trusts. People are going to want to add trustees and protectors and all of that. And I've told them, I'm gone. I am gone. Sorry, I'm done. I'm doing this. The funny thing is when I got involved in the Kuwaiti dinar, I purchased my Kuwaiti dinar, and I was in the bank 4 months later exchanging them. So I kind of thought when I agreed to assist these guys that I'd be done, not within 4 months, but within a relatively short period of time. Well, 14 years later, I'm still here. So I just told them, I'm sorry, I'm done, and I've given you fair warning. Not that, that I'm indispensable in any way. I'm not suggesting that. I'm merely saying that you're going to need more lawyers, you're going to need more paralegals, because you're going to get a tsunami of requests, and you're the attorneys. I can't do that anyway, and so, you're just going to have to get yourself another boy, because I'm moving on down the road.
Okay. Well, one last question on that note. Can attorneys other than Trusts Unlimited supply us with any supporting documentation like a subtrust, or does everything have to come from the law firms that Trusts Unlimited?
In my opinion, no, only because this is a complex trust designed by most people as denarians. You have no idea how many attorneys have called me and said, hey, I have a client for this reason or that reason. They brought this trust in. I really need some help. Can you explain this, that, or the other? And what are these currencies? What's going on? So that's the problem. You want to deal with someone that knows exactly what you've got in terms of your currencies, exactly what you've got in terms of the trust, what you're trying to do.
Okay. Well, Jim, thank you very much, sir. That answers my question. I do have some more, but I don't want to hog the line. Out of respect to everybody else.
Okay.
I'll hit you next week or send you an email or something.
Send me an email, all right?
Okay. Thank you.
All right. You take care. Bye-bye now. Our next caller is area code 209. That's 209. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, Jim. This is Sheila, Oklahoma. How are you?
Yes. How are you? Well, you've made things very interesting in the last couple of weeks.
Yes, I have. That's one of the reasons I'm jumping on. I have one statement and two long-winded questions, so I'll go ahead and start with the statement. As you mentioned earlier, history does repeat itself. And Kuwait, I don't know if you're aware of this because I'm a researcher, Kuwait revalued exactly 1 week into Ramadan. So their Ramadan started March 17th in 1991, and they revalued on March 24th of 1991.
Well, you got me on that one, because I said on the call that it would be unlikely. It's possible, but unlikely. But I forgot, or else I wasn't aware that Ramadan had hit when the Kuwaiti dinar. But that's very good news.
I'm not trying to stump you. I'm just letting you know that.
No, on the contrary, I'm happy. I'm happy to be wrong when it's to my benefit.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people out there saying that if it doesn't happen, this weekend, then it's going to be 30 days. And I'm just saying that actually might not be true. It could very well be the 17th of March if it holds true to the history and follows, because their Ramadan starts this weekend, or the 10th per se. So, theoretically it could happen. So that's my statement. Go ahead.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Are you the Forex girl?
Yes. That's where I'm going.
So.
That's my.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So when we since it's out of the bag and now everybody's talking about it and it's kind of public.
Right.
I researched the graph over the last year, so I'm just going to give a brief overview. I've been following it closely for the last 30, 45 days, but I did review the graph for the last year, and just a little educational part. It was staying at 76 cents to like 85 cents for the better part of the year. Last May, it did start inching up around $1. It seemed like there was some activity and trading on the back screen for futures, etc., not for public.
Right.
Just to clarify again. But then about 4.5 months ago, right around October 31st, November 1st, it started jumping. And it's kind of been jumping exponentially, but the last 2 weeks, it has jumped sometimes 19, 20 cents a day. So when you started this call an hour and a half ago, it was at 290, and it's at like 294 right now. So it's already jumped 4 cents in the last hour and a half.
It was 290. It was 293 60 seconds ago.
Right. Well, now it's at 294. So that being said, and again, this is another theory, and I'm just throwing it out there to get your opinion. It could very well by this weekend be $3, $3.25. At the rate it's been jumping.
Absolutely. And remember, the benchmark's 322. That's when it dumped.
Exactly.
So 322 to me, as I said, to me that's the floor.
Right. So if it hits the 322 theoretically this weekend, and in my opinion only, do you believe, like I believe, that it could actually go to the public Forex, which is where we can all see it and trade it publicly?
Well,
do you think that's kind of where they're waiting for that alignment possibly?
It's entirely possible that that's the benchmark they're waiting for to flip the switch. And like you said, well, like you said, if I was not attuned to the timing of Ramadan at the time because I wasn't doing calls back then. I was just a guy who was investing, and I wasn't, aware of all of that. So the stars seem to be aligning. All the momentum. I mean, I don't see how they can stop it at this point. It's a freight train right now coming down the tracks.
It is, and for example, if it doesn't hit that mark by this weekend, I don't see why it wouldn't by the following weekend, which would be one weekend to their Ramadan, which means, in my opinion, all stars would align on the 17th.
Well, the other way I was explaining it was even if they decide, you know what, we don't want to, because the country's in a different situation than it was then, too, so that's part of the decision. But I just don't see after Ramadan. I just see it popping right after that. If it doesn't hit during Ramadan, as unlikely as I thought that was, you've changed my perspective on that with your information. So
well, it is a time where they fast and pray, but also it's a celebratory time where, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but they purchase new things. That's when they renew their clothing, their home furnishings. That's
true. True.
Celebration. So why wouldn't they, with that new purchasing power, why wouldn't they be able to celebrate in such a way that they can get all the things that their families need? I mean, to me, that makes sense.
Preach, Pastor, preach. That's exactly right. You hit the nail on the head with that one. I'm glad you're the last call, and I'm glad I saved you for the last call because this is a good note to end on here.
Okay. Well, the next question, that was my two basic statements. The next one is kind of like the chicken before the egg. A lot of people have different opinions on this, and I think mine differs from yours, and I like that conversation, so I'm going to throw it out there. I've researched some of the project to delete the 3 zeros, and my understanding and my research is that is to delete the 3 zeros off the notes. So eventually, like a $10,000 note would be a $10 note. And it's not so much off the rate that we're currently seeing. For example, that the public 0.000, because there's more than 3 zeros on that. Before the 83, there's actually, yes. So then that still wouldn't make sense because even if you deleted 3 of those zeros, there's still a 0.083, which would make it like 8 cents. So that to me is, again, I'm not trying to contradict you. I just like to understand.
Well, there are two sides to the equation. All right. There are the deletion of the zeros on the value of the dinar against the dollar. We're talking about the zeros after the decimal. That's one method. The other is the deletion of the zeros on the 3-0 provisional currency, which is a redenomination. Some refer to it as a LOP. All a LOP is slang for redenomination. But the bottom line is going to be that the $10,000 dinar note, IQD, should be worth 10 dinar. The 25,000 should be worth 25. That's the simple way. Now, if it turns out that a 10,000 dinar note is really a 9.675 dinar note, that's possible, but it's complicated. I doubt very seriously that would happen. So, again, the difference is between are they deleting the zeros after the decimal point on the value of the dinar against the dollar, or are they deleting the zeros from the currency? I've always expressed it as deleting the zero from the currency because it's the easiest way for everyone to understand basically what's happening.
Right, and that's the way I read their project to delete the 3 zeros. So that's what I'm questioning. So that being don't you think that they'll give us like a very short window, maybe 90 days? I mean, in country, I think they're going to have a shorter window to turn in their monies in country.
Well, they did that. They did that with their. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say nationwide, internationally, not nationwide. Internationally, don't you believe that they'll give us a little bit longer, maybe 3 months?
They did. Well, they did 3 months with the Kuwaiti dinar.
Correct.
To me, it doesn't. The time period for me isn't how many days or how many months they give us. The time period for me is when our taxes due. If this thing pops now, we have a tax issue to deal with. If it happens after April 1st and Ramadan starts, April 10th, if it happens on April 17th, we're golden. We can exchange the currency. We can hold the currency. We don't have to exchange it. Taxes wouldn't be due until July. We can compel the IRS to tell us exactly what the tax is. Is it going to be ordinary income or pursuant to public or a publication 525? Is it cap gain? We can resolve all of that. But that to me is the issue. Why would you want to hold on to the currency anyway? Anything could happen. You could lose it. It could get stolen. You could have why would you do that? Would you put $1 million under your bed in USD? Why would you do that?
No, I agree. I'm just, again, it's the conversation I'm trying.
Yeah, I'm just hypothetically, I'm saying, why would anyone even want to do that? They might put a limit, but like I said, our issue is the tax issue. We have tax straddle we got to worry about. That's the real issue for us. And of course, Danette, we talked about this. It'd be really unfortunate if we had to exchange it at a ridiculously lower rate than possible to pay a stinking tax, which might not be due. We're thinking it's ordinary income, and it might be cap gain. Like I
Correct.
said,
And that's another conversation that would go on forever because I have all different information on that as well. So I don't want to confuse.
Yeah, well, I think it was. But I think it was United States versus Caterpillar. I could be wrong. I think that's the one where they said, do not rely on a publication. The IRS has the right to overrule a publication. There's no way this bunch in Washington, in my opinion, are going to call it anything but ordinary income. They're probably going to try to slap a millionaire surtax on us. Remember, they don't even want us to have it. So they're certainly going to take as much of it as they can. It's who they are,
I'll send you another link when we're done with this call, and that might be a
please do. I really appreciate it.
It's regarding the taxes. It's regarding that information, and we can have an off the phone conversation or off the call conversation.
Well, everything you sent has been very interesting and panned out. So please send it along. I greatly appreciate it.
Okay. Well, that's all I had to say. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much. Have a great day. I look forward to your email. Sheila was our last caller for today. I think we had a good call today. Got a lot of information out there. Things are looking good, folks. As I said, the bottom line for me is it seems as though the momentum is taking us to a place where this is going to be unstoppable, and this is good news for all of us. Our concern, of course, is taxes, investments. I hope those of you that have not as yet contacted us to get our initial no-obligation package will do so. There's a lot of good information in there, and with this wealth comes responsibility. It's going to be a lot of work, a lot more work than you think, to manage a substantial amount of wealth, and establishing this trust is going to go a great way to cutting out all of the bad players that are going to try to interfere, whether it's the government, whether it's taxes, whether it's frivolous litigation, all of those issues. Again, you can contact us by email, Trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC @gmail.com, or our phone service, which is 307-274-4122. Our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye now.